Hello and welcome to today's video. Today's video is all about this lens. This lens is the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 for Fuji X system. So that's what we're going to talk about. And before we get started, a couple things to chat about. The first thing to talk about is that this video is sponsored by me. I purchased this lens myself. I have an affiliate link for this lens down below from B&H Photo, which would help support this channel by paying a small commission to me at no extra cost to you if you purchase this lens through B&H Photo. Speaking of B&H Photo, they have an educational discount on this lens of about $50. So if you're an educator or a student, sign up for their education program so you can take advantage then of their educational pricing on certain products. They don't do it on all their products, but this one is one of them. So $50, that's about 10%. That's a good deal. The second thing to know about how I approach these reviews or first impressions is that I'm not a pixel peeper. I don't zoom in at 100%. I don't check micro contrast because I'm not even sure I know what that is. I've read it, but I don't know what it is. The way I approach reviewing the quality of images is by looking at them on my screen, printing out some when I can, and then seeing how it looks. So that's my methodology for judging a lens. We'll talk about some other performance factors and things like that, but I wanted to get that out of the way up front. Another thing to let you know about is there will be a slideshow of some of the sample photos that you're going to see here at the end of the video, as well as down below I have a link to a Flickr album with all the edited photos. So let's get started. Now that I've had this lens for about 5 days, I've gone out twice to create some photos, and I think I've got about 200 photos between those two sessions. Before we get into talking about the lens specifically, let's talk about where it sits and what it's competing against. So let's take a look at that, see what some of the other options that are available in addition to this nifty lens. So the first option that's of lenses that are similar to the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 is the Fujinon 18-55 f2.8 to 4.0, which retails for about $700. This lens has been around for quite a while, and as most reviewers will tell you on YouTube, it's a really, really nice lens. It has no weather resistance. It does have image stabilization, does have an aperture ring. I'll let you read all that. Minimum focusing distance is about 4 inches. The weight is minimal, a little less than a pound. But I have not used this lens. It never quite struck the price performance tipping point for me, so I have not used this lens. I've only know what I've read online or watched in videos. The next lens up is a relatively new one for Fuji X-Series, which is the Tamron 17-70 f2.8 at $800. This lens does have weather resistance as well as image stabilization, but it does not have an aperture ring, has a longer minimum focusing distance, and it's pretty large and heavy. Again, this is a lens I have not used. For me, again, this one at $800 with lacking aperture ring and the physical size of it just wasn't quite where I wanted it to be interesting personally to me. The next lens to compare it to is maybe a little bit different, which is the Fujinon 16-55 f2.8, one of their red badge lenses, which is usually denoting that they're higher quality lenses. I am recording this video with this lens, and that's the lens I usually use for video. I use it quite a bit for events. I really like it. It's amazing image quality, but it's large, it's expensive, it's heavy, and it doesn't focus very close. So that's primarily the reason I don't take it out with me almost every day. And then that brings us to the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 at $550. So it's the least expensive, the smallest, also for Fuji, the newest of this batch. So having said all that, there's one more lens I want to compare it to. It's not in the 16-50-ish focal range. It is the 16-80 f4 from Fujinon. This is the lens that's usually on my camera all the time. It's at least the lens I start with. And as you can see, it is larger, heavier. Well, you can't see that it's heavier, but trust me, it's heavier. And it is it's physically larger. So this lens does have, the 16-80 does have weather resistance and image stabilization, which is kind of handy. Also has an aperture ring. So from a physical usable standpoint for me as a Fuji user, the lack of aperture ring I thought was going to be a pretty big deal. But in the few days I used it, I quickly adjusted to just using the command dial to adjust aperture. And in fact, when I put a different lens on my camera. I was trying to use the command dial on an aperture ring lens, and I was like, why isn't my aperture changing? I'd gotten used to it pretty quickly. Also, this lens is really small, really light. Focusing is incredibly fast and just about silent. It feels good. It's solid. It's mostly metal, I believe, construction, at least at the back. While it does not say it has weather resistant, there is a rubber gasket around where the lens connects to the body to give a little seal there. I did have it in a little bit of a drizzle the other day, and I had no problems with it. But it is not rated at all for weather resistance, and again, it does not have image stabilization. But it's tiny. It is really small, it's really light, but again, it feels solid, feels like quality. So from a put it on your camera and have a lens that is going to give you quite a bit of range of focal length, but not have a large presence on your camera body. This, for right now, I think is the winner. So next up, and maybe the most important part, is image quality. How does it work on the camera, and what kind of images does it create? In my short and initial experience with it, I really like it. There are a couple things that are personality maybe, and one of those things is vignetting. It does seem to have a fair bit of vignetting just about at most apertures, especially wide open, at different focal lengths as well. But I personally don't mind that. I usually add some vignetting in Lightroom when I'm editing my photos. I kind of like the darker corners, so it's not that big a deal, although since I don't have control over it, it's a little thing for me. But overall, image quality, I'm really impressed. In my experience, it's got great detail, great colors. So just going to talk through a couple images and a couple of the things that people usually ask about or talk about in lens reviews, and then we'll do a conclusion and have the slideshow at the end. So this is one of the first images I took. It's kind of a thing I enjoy doing, which is getting close, getting details, blurry backgrounds, f2.8, moody days around here in the early December 2022. So not a lot of light, but this lens does really nicely. I love the detail, the textures, and the ability to get close with this lens. I tend to really like close focusing, so this lens fits really nicely for me. I thought I'd throw in a couple just general landscape type photos. So here's at 18 millimeters with the city of Seattle in the distance, taken from Kirkland. And then here's a 50 millimeter, approximately same location. So it does really nice as a landscape lens, as you would expect. No surprises, and just nice images on a gloomy Seattle winter day. I found this leaf, orange leaf on an orange car, so I thought, let's take a photo of that with the raindrops. And again, pretty close with this. I think this is at 50 millimeters. Good detail, good depth of field fall off. You can see the vignetting here a little bit happening in the corners, but again, for the type of photography I do, I really don't mind that. The overall image quality I really am impressed with, as well as sharpness, detail, all those things that on screen, they look really good. One of the things people usually talk about in lens conversations is the bokeh behavior. So we've got some blurry out of focus lights here in the background, and this is at f2.8, so we get mostly round balls of out of focus light. So again, a nice focus fall off, nice detail, good sharpness, good contrast, all those things that you expect in modern lenses, and this lens does it really well. One of the things I was trying to check with this particular photo was how well it focuses on objects when they're close, and then you have solids in the background. And this lens did a really nice job, super quick, fast, easy, accurate, and then you get all these cool details as well, and textures. So again, no surprises, really great performance, and the image, the colors look great. The image quality overall is really pleasing to me. So in this photo, again, shows the overall image quality. I think the ability to hold in a position for a little while you're waiting for a scene to happen, because this lens is so light, it's easy to hold and hang around for a few minutes to see if something will happen in your scene. And lo and behold, it did in this case, and a couple clicks later we had this photo. So on the photo side of things, one of the things I think that's easy to forget about when we talk about lenses and even cameras in general is usability, and how the experience is of using that piece of gear. And for me, this lens is quite fun to use. It's just tiny and tidy. It's almost cute, and it's much smaller presence on the camera body than the 16 to 80. So I think it's going to be a really nice addition to what I will be doing with street photography in the future. More on that in a couple minutes after I talk about video next. So I have a confession to make. I forgot to do anything really about video with this lens, because that's sometimes a question that gets asked, is focus performance in video. So what I'm doing is I switched to the 18 to 50 right now for this remainder part of the video that I'll be talking. So you can let me know how it does. I did a quick little test on some of my cameras behind me to see how focusing works. I'll throw that footage in here. Did a 4K 120 clip and a couple 4K 60 clips. So you can see how the performance looks. From what I'm seeing, it's fine and dandy. All looks good. No surprises again. It seems like a really, really wonderful lens for both photo and video. Every time I talk about photography gear, one of the things I mention is there's no bad lenses usually from major manufacturers anyway, and additionally there's no perfect lenses. So with those two thoughts in mind, I've talked about most of the good things that I like about this lens. Here's a couple things that kind of I would do differently, but I understand why the decisions were made. The first thing that I would change on this lens, if I had my say in the vote, would be the zoom ring is opposite of the way all the other Fuji lens zoom. So I took a minute to get used to that, and I still bumped up against it. I was zooming the wrong way when I wanted to zoom in or out. So muscle memory, I'll pick that up. Although with this being the only lens that zooms that way, every time I use the lens, there will be a little bit of a learning curve. Not the end of the world, but it's a little usability thing. The second thing that I would do differently if I had my choice and vote in the matter would be I would include an aperture ring, but I understand why they don't. It's one way they can make this lens such a great value is they manufacture it the same way for this body, for Leica, and for Sony E-mount, which has been around for a couple years. So for me, I'll accept that trade-off of a lower price for not having an aperture ring, and also for the zoom that goes the opposite direction that I'm used to in Fuji zoom lenses. So who is this lens for? Well, I think it's for a lot of folks. It's a great lens. I think it's going to be a hard upsell, if you will, to the Fujinon 18 to 55 lens now. This lens does a lot of that, and especially with most Fuji cameras now having image stabilization, do you need image stabilization so much in your lenses? And I'm going to say probably not. I think another person this lens would be great for is the person I bought this lens for, which is my wife. Actually, this is an early Christmas present for her. I had to have her open the box early. I said, open this so that I can go make a video about it. But this lens is going to be her primary walk-around lens from now on. And for her use case, it's going to be great. She likes smaller lenses, lighter lenses. She's a little more casual, I'll say, in her photography. So this lens is really, really good for her. If I didn't already have the 16 to 80, I think I would get this lens for myself and have a second one and use it as my primary walk-around lens. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any thoughts or questions you'd like to have answered about this lens, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to see if I can address those questions for you. Look forward to having conversations online and getting to know you a little bit better, and really enjoy that process. Looking ahead to the remainder of the year, which is quickly drawing to a close, next week I'll be doing a video from downtown Bellevue, some street photography again down there. And then the last video of the year will likely be an end of the year kind of wrap-up video, some thoughts and reflections and looking ahead a little bit. So look forward to seeing you there. So until we meet again in those videos, stay safe, stay well, and have fun creating photos. Bye for now.